38 weeks ago, the rule is game. I'm a boss, yeah, I'll take fame. With my fantasy team, gonna rise to the top, no one can stop me. Gonna make 'em drop.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. I am your host, Nash, and let's get into it. Gameweek 9 is done, and we now have 29 weeks left to go. How was Gameweek 9 for you? I think the best performers had Bumo and Wood in their teams. I, of course, had neither, but somehow, just like last week, I just managed to get 60 points flat. The average is 54, so just 6 above. I mean, I'm better than average, but not so great. When I look around, here are a few things I have observed. There was heartbreak as clean sheets were just wiped out towards the end of the games. Aston Villa, Fulham, and Brighton all lost their clean sheets towards the end of the games, and in some cases in the 90-plus minutes. Eze finally got a return. Yay! Haaland scored. Yay! Saka started and scored, which must have been painful for many of you who had removed him. Gabriel got injured. Brennan Johnson has decided not to score since we put him into our teams. Budget strikers seem to be the way to go. At this point, it seems like nobody knows how to keep a clean sheet anymore. For whatever reason, Delap did not start. Welbeck continues his amazing form. Crystal Palace finally win. El Shakiko resulted with Ten Hag being under more pressure. And yeah, those are the biggest headlines. So let's start with the highest scoring game of the week. This was far and clear. 4-3 Brentford, 4 Ipswich 3. This game was surprising because Delap did not start this game. It was Hurst, and then Hurst starts a game and he scores. And now you're like, okay, will this be happening now? Is Ipswich going to have a rotation of strikers? Imagine that, choosing an Ipswich striker and he's not playing because the other one is playing. It's painful. It's almost disrespectful to the fans and the FPL managers in particular. So Ipswich got off to an amazing start. They went 2-0 up. Smotrich and Hurst scored. Wissa scored. Then there was an own goal, a Bumo penalty, and then a Bumo cross goal. This game was very frustrating if your name is Harry Clark. He scored an own goal. Then he took down a Brentford player for the penalty, and then he got sent off. That's a horrible performance, which gave him a grand total of -5. Even worse than Saliba's -3 last week. Ipswich, for me, have proven so far this season that they will be competitive in nearly all their fixtures, and it's worth having assets from their team because they will be able to create chances. Whether they will take them is a different one. They do not have the concentration to keep it solid at the back, so they will be mostly wishing for a combination of a brilliant performance from their attack and an off day from the other side for them to win. Or maybe just enough brilliance that it overshadows their shortcomings. For Brentford, Janelt, Lewis Potter, Roseleaf, and Wissa had assists. Chaplin, Davis, and Hurst had assists for Ipswich. Hurst with a goal and an assist on his Premier League full start shows that maybe there's something there, but then what happens to Delap? And that really makes everything a little bit confusing. Bumo got the 3 bonus points, Hurst got 2, and Wissa got 1. When it comes to disappointing matches, it seems like there are quite a few this week. Let me start with one which is, but isn't. Manchester City 1, Southampton 0. From a fantasy perspective, this game was a massive letdown, especially for those of you, maybe if you're one of those 300,000 people who triple captained Haaland. You must be particularly bitter, especially if you watched his game. Haaland, unlike previous games, had so many chances to score. I think he had 5. Watching this game must have been so painful because after 5 minutes, I was like, yes, thank God my decision to have Haaland as my captain has not been punished again. Then after that, he just proceeded to miss chance after chance after chance after chance. Ramsdale had like 6 saves in this game, and at least 3 of those were from Haaland just messing up. So it's bittersweet because you have Haaland, he scores, but this is the most disappointed I've ever been for having Haaland and having him score. It's much better when he doesn't have chances and he scores 1 goal than he has 6 and he scores 1. Matheus Nunes had the assist for the goal. Vardiol, Savio had 3 bonus points each, and Ruben Diaz had 1. Haaland played so poorly that he couldn't even get a bonus point, yet he was a game winner. That should tell you everything you need to know. So don't look at this 1-0 and think Southampton are good. No, Haaland was bad, in spite of scoring. When it comes to another disappointing match, well, the clearest candidate is Crystal Palace 1, Spurs 0. Now, if you've been watching Crystal Palace games, which I'm sure not many of you have, they've been missing something. And they were still missing it in this game, but somehow I think Son missing really messed up Spurs. They could do nothing in this game. They were lucky it wasn't more than 1-0. This game is just like the Man City game. The result doesn't really show you how the game went. They could have had more chances to score. I mean, Crystal Palace should have had more goals. They just missed. Mateta is back. He's scored. Eze is back. If you still have him, wow, just well done to you. He had an assist, was a good assist. Mateta had a good goal. 1-0 was the end of the game. Brennan Johnson had a chance off the post. He had an assist, which was denied when Kulusevski missed. They did have their chances, but overall, Palace deserved their win. Mateta had the 3 bonus points. Chalobah had 2, and Henderson had 1. West Ham 2, Man United 1. This is only a disappointing game because of our perception of the team that Manchester United should be instead of the team that Manchester United is. Also, having said that, Manchester United had the post hit 2 times in the first half. Was it even 3? Basically, they were the much better team in the first half. But then, football is the 90-minute game. In the second half, Somerville scored. Then Casemiro scored somehow off an assist from Xerxes, which was a header. And then Bowen scored a penalty when De Ligt fouled in the box. To be honest, this wasn't a great showing for both sides. And both managers should be sacked if you ask me. Somerville had 2 bonus points. Casemiro had 3. And Danny Ings had 1. The marquee game of the weekend saw Arsenal take on Liverpool. This was a bit of a surprise because nobody expected Saka to play, well, except maybe me and a few people hoping. I was really hoping. I had used my wild card to bring Saka in, and my logic was, I can't use my wild card to bring this boy in and then remove him even before he plays. So that's literally the only reason he was still in my team. And thankfully, he started and he scored a really good goal. He really put my friend, Mr. Robertson, on the ground. And I was very happy because screw him for messing me up in the previous game weeks. So that felt like sweet justice. I felt like Saka personally was looking out for me. Also, speaking of putting people to the ground, please watch when Eze cut. I think it's Romero. I think he nearly injured him. Put him on the ground flat. Anyway, back to this game. Saka scored. Great assist off from Ben White. Then set piece, corner, Diaz heads it back. Van Dijk scores. Then there's a foul. Rice takes the free kick. And Merino scores his first goal as a gunner. Then Gabriel gets injured. Timber gets injured. Liverpool have a counter. Nunez lays it on for Salah. Salah scores. And that's how the game ends. 2-2. It was quite an entertaining game. I honestly thought that Arsenal were the better team, but that's not how football works. The better team doesn't always win. Salah got the 3 bonus points, Saka got 2 bonus points, and Merino got 1. There were only 2 clean sheets this weekend, and those came in the Crystal Palace game and in the Man City game. So if you guys listen to me and put Yeahh, well done. I'm sure none of you did that. But yeah. So let's go over some stats. Nicholas Jackson has now surpassed Kai Havertz's tally of 19 Premier League goals for Chelsea. Manchester City and Leicester are still the only 2 teams in the Premier League that have scored in every game week so far. Manchester United have 11 points in 9 games and a goal difference of -3 in the Premier League so far. 8 goals scored, 11 goals conceded. Saka has scored 50 goals for Arsenal in the Premier League. He is the youngest player to do so. Harry Clark is the second player in Premier League history to score an own goal, concede a penalty, and be sent off in the same match. Jan Bednarek did that with Southampton when they played against Manchester United in 2021. In case you're wondering how that -5 was reached. So he has 2 points for playing 68 minutes. Then they conceded 4 goals, so that's -2, so that takes it down to 0. Then he scored an own goal, which is -2, and then a red card, which is -3. Well, that's a lot. He should not even have played that game. Salah has recorded 84 points from 9 games. This is his second best start in his 8 seasons at Liverpool. Goodness. In the 21-22 season, he had 107 points by this point in time. That is absolutely ridiculous. He's having a great season. It might not be enough to have Diaz or Jota anymore. Over 300,000 managers triple captained Haaland. With Palmer's goal against Newcastle, it sees him now having scored 20 goals in his last 24 games for Chelsea. Since Nuno Espirito Santo took over from Cooper, Wood has scored 18 goals. In that same period, only Palmer and Haaland have scored more. Wood is also now number 2 in all-time Premier League goals for Forest. Wood is also now number 2 in the Premier League. He has scored fewer. Haaland is number 1 by far, and then it's him, and then Bumo. Aston Villa are continuing to enjoy their best start for 26 years. Evan Ferguson, youngster for Brighton. I'd wondered what happened to him. He popped up and scored over the weekend. That was his first goal since November in 2023. Welcome back. With his goal for Brighton over the weekend, his 6th goal of the season, Welbeck has already surpassed his goal tally for the last season. I'm now worried about him because that's what happened with Brennan Johnson, and then he just stopped. Southampton have now equaled their worst start to a Premier League season. First 9 games, 0 victories. Wolves have not kept a clean sheet in 20 games now. Delap, even though he came off the bench, has now scored 4 goals in 4 games. Bumo has scored in all home fixtures this season. He might be like last season's Gordon. Ipswich versus Brentford was the Premier League's 937th different fixture in their history. Wissa is Brentford's 2nd player to reach 30 goals in the Premier League. No guesses for who's number 1? Ivan Toney. With their victory, Manchester City are now unbeaten in 32 games. Manchester City have also gained 13 points this season from losing positions. That is a Premier League history fact and record. Haaland's goal was his 74th in 75 games. It's ridiculous, this man. The highest points in Gameweek 9 was 117. The average points was 54. The most selected player was Haaland. The most captained player was Haaland. The most vice-captained was Palmer. There were 10 million transfers made, 158,000 wildcards used, 51,000 bench boosts played, 71,000 free hits, and 330,000 triple captains played, and 300,000 of those, at a minimum, went to Haaland. So If you got those 21 points, 18 points, I hope you're happy. The top performer of the week was Mbomo. The top transfers for this week coming in are Mbomo at number 1 with 220,000, Wood 170,000, Ait Nouri 111,000, Vardiol 111,000, and Wissa 82,000. The top players being removed: Son 87,000, Watkins 84,000, Diaz 81,000, Gabriel 73,000, and for some reason Saka 72,000. Let's look at some news and facts around our table. The most popular captain in our group this week was Haaland with 179. So that's 6 more than last week where we had 173. Salah was our second most popular captain with 16 people choosing him. Well done. Palmer was our third most popular captain choice with 15 people. Number 4 was Mbomo. 6 people chose him as captain. Number 5 was Saka. 6 people chose him as captain as well. 4 people chose Watkins to be their captain. 2 people chose Havertz. 1 person chose Son. 1 person chose Haaland. 1 person chose KDB. Somebody chose Isak, not bad. Somebody chose Bernardo Silva. Somebody chose Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Somebody chose Nicholas Jackson, not a bad call. And somebody chose Solanke, and that was a bad call. Leon Mortier, manager of football, not soccer, had the best transfer outcome. His transfers directly led to 29 more points than he would have had if he kept the same team. Congratulations to you. When it looks at the streak of green arrows, Tommy Oladipo has gotten green arrows for the 5th straight week. So keep it up, Tommy. What you're doing is making sense. Team The Walker Dead had the most players to score goals, with 8 goals being scored by his players. Leon Mortier is this week's manager who had the most points on the bench. So imagine he was already the person who gained the most points from his transfers. He used the wild card, by the way. But he had 17 points on the bench. I guess it's not bad. I don't know what to say. It is what it is. When it comes to the streak of red arrows, Mr. Don Clinton is the man at the bottom. He has continued for 8 weeks in a row. Most decrease in overall rank belongs to Melvin Keter, manager of Keter's FC, who fell by 1.6 million positions in the global table. In our table, the person who dropped the most places this week was Mishuki Shage, manager of Shuksmi. He dropped 53 positions. The lowest points this week come from the manager, 49 Invincibles, manager of Team Classic 11. And when you look at it, it's the kind of team that looks like it made sense a couple of weeks ago, but it doesn't make sense anymore. So, Captain Haaland, second striker Delap, 5 points. Haaland had 12. Calvert-Lewin had 2 points. Guedes from Wolves had 1, Martinelli 2, Tavernier 3, Leon Bailey 4. At the back he had Romero for 2, Trent for 1, Gabriel for 1. And in the keeping position, David Raya, 0 points. This week we had somebody make more transfers than Don Clinton. And this manager's name is Vinny Makori. He got 55 points. And he lost 60 points because he made 16 transfers. And the most painful part is that he had Wissa on the bench who gave him 10 points. Painful. Our second most transfers made this week was 15 by none other than Don Clinton. He chose a good team this time. He lost 15 points. He made 15 transfers, lost 56 points, got 84 points. His captain was Haaland. He triple captained him, so it wasn't the best use of a triple captain, but the idea was there. So he had Wood, 13 points. Haaland, 18 points. Wissa, 10 points. Then Rogers, 1 point. Saka, 9 points. Bomo, 15. Kulusevski, 1. Keane, 2. Vardiol, 9. Gabriel, 1. And Sells, 5. This is a good team, but I'm sure he'll make 15 more next week. Eliud Njoroge continues to have the most valuable team in our league which is valued at a grand 102.7. Manager Peter Dennis of Inject 11 has risen 53 positions this week, so he's our top league rank riser. Our overall rank riser is Muxin FC. He has increased his rank by 1.8 million globally. Well done. Peter Dennis is also our top performer this week with a grand total of 87 points. Congratulations to you, sir. Up top, he has Wood, who gave him 13 points. Then he had Vardy, who gave him 8. Nicholas Jackson, who gave him 9. Emil Smith-Rowe, who gave him 6. Dwight McNeil, who gave him 2. Palmer was his captain and gave him 20 points. Salah was his other midfielder who gave him 10 points. Vardiol had 9. Trent had 1. Luca Digne from Aston Villa had 7. And in goal, he had Martinez, who gave him 2. And that gave him a grand total of 87 points, and he only made 1 transfer this week. So it was clean. I'm sure he wishes he had his backup keeper in goal. Henderson had 8 points. In number 2, we had Terence Nigel, manager of One Header FC, who had 85 points. Muxin Earthman of Muxin FC had 84 points. Don Clinton had 84 points as well. And in number 5, we had Abdul Malik Alawati, Lawyer Malik, who got 83 points. Our league table sees Arnold Midunga retain his position at the top for I think 3 weeks now. He has 604 points. He had 62 points. Franklin Asiema, for the second week in a row, is on number 2. He had 66 points, 597 points. So the gap is just 7 points between number 1 and number 2. Number 3 is architect Sadiq Suleiman, who had 79 points. He's been doing really, really well. His captain was Mbomo, who gave him 30, so he really closed the gap. Number 4 is Fahmi Zulkifly, who has 587 points. Number 5 is Bode Blachowicz. I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names. He had 586 points. Texas Tens, manager of Tenor FC, had 585 points. 584. Lawyer Malik, 583 points at number 7. John Wangemi, Reese's Set Pieces, 582 points. Number 9, The Walker Dead, 578 points. Number 10 is Ken Mwachilimu, who has 577 points. His team is called the Schmetterling. So just between number 10 and number 1 is roughly 30 points. The most owned players in our group are Haaland, number 1. Number 2 is Mbomo. Number 3 is Palmer. Number 4 is Salah. Number 5 is Rogers. Number 6 is Rico Lewis. Number 7 is Emil Smith-Rowe. Number 8 is Raya. Number 9 is Luis Diaz. And number 10 is Vardiol. Let's look at the top performing players in each position this week. In goal, we had 2 clean sheets. Henderson from Crystal Palace is number 1 with 8. Edison has 2. Travers from Bournemouth has 5, tied with Sells, who had 5, and Ramsdale had 4. The top 5 performing midfielders are Vardiol, number 1, who had 9, Chalobah, who had 8, and then it's a 3-way tie for 7 points, with Digne, Virgil, and Ruben Diaz sharing those points. When it comes to midfield, Mbomo was a top performing midfielder and overall player with 15 points. Iwobi had 11. Palmer, Salah, and Casemiro were tied with 10. When it comes to forwards, Chris Wood was a top performing player with 13 points, followed by Hurst, who had 11. Wissa had 10. And then Jackson and Cunha were tied for 9. Let's look at Gameweek 10's fixtures. Arsenal have had 0 clean sheets in the last 5 games. They're playing Newcastle. It'll be the early kickoff. Now, Gabriel got knocked off. Saliba will be back, and we're not sure if Timber will be back. So at the back, it will be a bit unstable. One thing to note is that I'm sure it's this weekend when the clock will change. So because of daylight savings, there'll be a time difference which will lose or gain 1 hour. In the last 5 fixtures, there have been 2 wins for Arsenal, 2 wins for Newcastle, and 1 draw. So this game could really go either way. The last encounter saw Arsenal win 4-1 with Havertz, Saka, Kiwior scoring goals. Willock scored for Newcastle and Botman an own goal for Arsenal. The good news is that Kiwior will be playing, so he may have a chance to score. But I'm sure this was a time when he was playing left back. Arsenal were good last time out against Liverpool. They didn't win, so they've lost ground on Manchester City. They are now 5 points behind Man City. Is the title gone? Saka and Merino scored last time out. Saka is still their top player. Havertz, Trossard and Martinelli, I'm not sure in which order are the other players I would choose from this team. I'm not getting into any Arsenal defenders for a while. Gordon was out last time out, but he will be back in this game. Him, Isak are probably the only players to take from Newcastle at this point. Newcastle have been getting results, but their play hasn't been great. They're like Manchester United in reverse, where Manchester United are not playing great either, but they're not getting the results. But Newcastle are not playing great, but they're getting results somehow. They have not been defending well. Ever since last season, they haven't recovered their defensive form, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to get into their defense. Wilson is still out. Lascelles is out. Trippier out. Dubravka out. Botman and Target are out. For Arsenal, Gabriel is out with what they're calling a knee injury. Timber is out with a muscle injury. Tierney is still out. Odegaard is still a few weeks away, and Calafiori is also out with a knee injury. So Arsenal are getting thinner at the back. Bournemouth versus Manchester City. Man City beat Southampton last time out, but they could have done more. Haaland was not impressive. He did score, but he could have done more. Bournemouth drew with Aston Villa last time out. They drew at the death. So they're both not in great form, even though Manchester City are unbeaten in 32 games. It's just the way the game went. It felt like they could have done more. And to be fair, their performances also haven't been inspiring. They have gotten the business done, but when you watch it, you're like, this seems so labored. Listen to these results. Man City 1, Bournemouth 0. Man City 6, Bournemouth 1. Man City 4, Bournemouth 1. Man City 4, Bournemouth 0. Those are their last recent results. And then 2-1, Manchester City 1. So, as usual, Manchester City have a favourable record against the team, but it seems like they like to hammer Bournemouth. In all of those results, Haaland has only scored 1 goal. What does that mean? Who knows? So, at the very least, there's only one thing that you can take from this, is that it is unlikely that Bournemouth will win this encounter. But if you were to choose, your best options are Semenyo, Evan Nilsson, Kluivert. For this game, Scott and Sinistera are out for Bournemouth. For Manchester City, Grealish, Doku, De Bruyne. Well, De Bruyne is doubtful. Walker is out, Bob is out, Rodri out. However, in my view, it's no coincidence that Doku is out and Haaland scores. Ipswich versus Leicester. This might be the most relevant head-to-heads for Ipswich because they've played Leicester in the Championship. They have 2 draws and 2 losses. Leicester are favoured in this game. Both teams have been good within what they can do. I know that's a weird thing to say about Ipswich because they haven't won a game yet. But they haven't been bad. They've been very competitive. Leicester have won games and they're also competitive. Leicester have the better record in the head-to-head, and I believe that they will be slightly favoured in this game. But Ipswich are growing and adjusting. This could be the first victory for them. Hurst might be the one to do the thing. They lost 4-3 last time out. Clark is not there, so he will not will them to a loss. So that's a positive. You know, if they say addition by subtraction, that is that. Smotsic, Dillap, Hurst, those are the players I'd recommend from this team. From Leicester, Vardy and Bonanote. I have Fas, but that's only because he's 4.0. Well, now he's 4.2, but because he's cheap, not because of anything else. Tuanzebe is out. Johnson is out. Greaves is out. Longa is out. For Leicester, Chaudhry is out. Stolaric is out. Vestergaard is out. And Daka is still out. Ipswich so far have conceded the most penalties this season. So if they run at them, if like Fatawu runs at them, or Mavididi, who knows what could happen. Liverpool versus Brighton. This will be a tough game. Both teams are in good form. Danny Welbeck has been scoring. Luis Diaz and Salah have been great for Liverpool. Their recent record shows that Brighton are not easy customers for Liverpool. Let's see. They have 2 draws, 2 victories for Brighton, and 1 victory for Liverpool in the last 5 encounters. It's not too often you'll hear me say that this season, but Brighton have the better record against Liverpool. Welbeck is definitely the first player I'd put on if I'm having Brighton players. And then if I had to choose another one, it would either be Matoma or Jorginho Rata. Probably Jorginho Rata and then Mitoma. In that order, Welbeck, Jorginho, Mitoma. And on the Liverpool side, if you can afford Salah, have him. If you don't, maybe you get Diaz and then Nunez. Alisson is injured. Bradley is out. Jota is out. Chiesa is out. Elliott is out. For Brighton, Webster is out. Milner out. João Pedro out. O'Reilly out. March and Minte out for Brighton. Moving on to Nottingham Forest versus West Ham. Chris Wood is the hottest player right now in the Premier League. So without even saying much, he would be the first player I would choose from Forest. In the encounters in the Premier League, it's a split. 2 wins for Forest, 2 wins for West Ham. West Ham are not in great form even if they beat Manchester United. I would say Jared Bowen is a great call for West Ham. If Somerville starts, I believe he would be a great choice. And Paqueta. Antonio does well, but I don't know. With him, you just never know what you're going to get. But he's there and he starts, so you can't look past him. But if you're to choose just one player, it would be Bowen. From Forest, like I previously said, it just has to be Wood. And then maybe Elliot Anderson and the defender. I have the keeper, so that's what I'll be keeping. But you could choose Aina, Murillo, one of them. Kudus is still suspended for West Ham, and Fulkrug is still injured. Gibbs-White is still out, Sangare is still out, and Danilo is out for Forest. When I look at the fixtures and the head-to-head records, there has been no draw in this match. So somebody will win this match. And if I had to choose, it would be Forest. Southampton versus Everton. Southampton were lucky not to lose by more than 1 goal last time out. Maybe they'll be luckier this time because none of those players are better finishers than Haaland. But Everton are in good form. They're unbeaten in 5 games now. They drew with Fulham late thanks to a goal from Beto. And they will be looking to continue not losing. Now, Branthwaite is back from injury, but Keane started because he had a great performance the last game out. So I'm not sure if he'll keep his place. So if you have Keane, watch out for that. Or if you're thinking about bringing Keane, watch out for that. Branthwaite might start this coming game. Bazunu, Larios, Stewart, and Smallbone are out for Southampton. For Everton, Chermiti, Eric Bunham, Garner, and Broja are out. This is a game that both managers will feel that they can win. If you're choosing Everton players, have your pick of defender, whichever one that is. I'm going to be having Keane. Some other people will be having Mikolenko or even Ashley Young. In the midfield, or rather going forward, Dwight McNeil, Ndiaye are not bad calls. Ndiaye is dangerous and he runs at them. DCL could be a decent choice, but with other budget strikers available, I wouldn't recommend him. Even though this is a great fixture, in theory, for him. Southampton, I made my bed with my wild card and I already have Archer, so that's who I would recommend. He had a good chance against Manchester City and he hit the post. Apart from him, It's really hard to choose. I would say Dibbling, but this man seems to keep rotating his players. Like, I don't know if you remember, but Brereton Diaz was starting in the first game. He hasn't played in 3 weeks. Aribo didn't start in spite of scoring. It's not clear what he's doing. He still seems to be searching for something within his squad, and he hasn't quite found it yet. So outside Archer, Dibbling, and maybe Lallana, it's really hard to recommend people moving forward. And I also wouldn't encourage you to move into Southampton defense, even though I myself have Howard Bellis, but that's also again because he's cheap. Everton will be slight favourites in this encounter, and we will be hoping for returns from my player Keane. Wolves versus Crystal Palace. In theory, this is when both of these teams' season kicks off. Crystal Palace finally got a win under their belts, finally looked like a team. They beat Spurs. That was a big victory. Now, they will be looking to continue from that fixture into this one with a W. Wolves also did well not to lose against Brighton and coming back 2-2 to snatch a draw from the claws of defeat. For me, it's very simple. If you're taking a Wolves player, it is Cunha, Strand Larsen, and Ait Nouri. And Strand Larsen should be the third of those players. From Crystal Palace, it is Mateta, Eze, and whichever defender you choose. Gay, Chaloba, maybe even Henderson. Wolves haven't kept a clean sheet in 20 games. So when you're choosing Ait Nouri, it's not because he is going to keep a clean sheet. It's because he is likely to score or assist. Riyad, Doucouré, Richards, and Franca are injured for Crystal Palace. Mepiu, Traore, Gonzalez, Huang, Kaladzic, Mosquera are out for Wolves. Their previous fixtures show that Crystal Palace have won 4 of the last 5 encounters. There have been no draws in these encounters for at least 6-7 games, so one side will win. Clean sheets are also not common in this fixture, and so expect both sides to go and score. Wolves can't keep a clean sheet, so expect Palace to score somehow. The next day we'll see Spurs kick off against Villa, which should be the marquee game. But the marquee game of this weekend will be Manchester United versus Chelsea. Again, not because Manchester United are a big team, but reputation, the history. Looking at Spurs versus Aston Villa. Now, I think given how we watched them play this weekend, they need to figure out how to play without Son again, because that previous game was a disaster. Son is still out there saying he'll be back mid-November. Spence doesn't figure into anything. Aston Villa have no injuries. In the previous head-to-head matches, in the last 5 fixtures, Spurs have won 3 games and Aston Villa have won 2. But just going on form alone, I would say Aston Villa have a slight upper hand against Spurs, because Spurs have been playing well. If you remove the Brighton game and the loss against Crystal Palace, they're in good form, but you have to remove those games. Villa, on the other hand, have been better. They are actually the better team right now, and I would go with them. The problem with them is that it seems like Watkins isn't quite on form, yet he's still their best player. Then you have Morgan Rogers and Leon Bailey. And then you have John Duran, who comes on and scores. So it's really hard to decide how to go about this. But I wouldn't be moving into Aston Villa players for this particular fixture. Nor would I be moving into Tottenham players for this particular fixture. Having spoken about the Villa players, looking at the Spurs players, somehow I still have to recommend Brennan Johnson because he's recently the best in form considering Son is out. Richarlison scored the penalty, so he is somebody to recommend, and Maddison, those 3. When it comes to defense, Pedro Porro can always have a random assist, but he hasn't had that. Udogie has been more productive recently, and Romero scores randomly. I definitely would not recommend Vicario. On the other end, Luca Digne is their best creative defender. So if you're looking for our way into their defense. That is the man. Manchester United versus Chelsea. Now, the last game I remember was that epic Palmer scoring like 2 goals in the last 2 minutes of the game. 4-3. That was a wild game. And honestly, I'm thinking of putting him as my captain this week. So outside that result, in their last 5 fixtures, Chelsea have won 1, drawn twice, and lost twice. So the odds are historically skewed towards Manchester United. However, recent form would beg to differ. Manchester United have been horrible this season. This is their worst start to a season since last season. I'm honestly not too sure how much more time Mr. Ten Hag has. If I was to recommend 3 players from Manchester United, the first one would be Garnacho, the second one would be Fernandes, and the third would be Haaland. For Chelsea, the first one is Palmer, the second is Nicholas Jackson, and the third would be Madueke. But just because I have to choose a third one, not because I would choose him. For Manchester United, they seem to have a long list of injuries. Anthony, Maguire, Mainu, Yoro, Shaw, Mount, Collier, and Malacia, although the last 2. For Chelsea, it's only Ben Chilwell who's unavailable. Onana still has the most clean sheets this season. Chelsea haven't kept a clean sheet in 6 matches. Both teams have really questionable defense, so just avoid their defenders if you can. I am personally hoping for a Palmer hat-trick again. The last game of the week will see Fulham take on Brentford on Monday. So, just listen to the head-to-head. Okay, their last match was a draw. But then before that, Brentford beat them 3-0. Before that, Fulham beat them 3-2. Then Brentford beat them 3-2. Then Fulham beat them 3-2. Then Brentford beat them 3-0. So the only thing I'm learning here is that at least one of these teams will score 3 goals. Now, if you're Brentford, where are those 3 goals coming from? Wissa, Bumo, and your random defender. Be it Pinnock, Van der Berg, Collins. Whichever one you choose, that's fine. From Fulham, Iwobi, Raul Jimenez, Aaron Smith-Rowe, and then if you talk about defensive creation, Anthony Robinson. He has not been as great as he was last season, but he is still the most likely from the back, especially given that Castagne is injured. I am leaning towards Brentford beating Fulham, but I am expecting it to be a game which has goals. Let's look at the FDR, fixture difficulty rating. Arsenal have Newcastle, Chelsea, Forest, West Ham, and Man United. So it will begin to get easier after the Chelsea game. Not that Forest are easy by any means, but compared to Chelsea, it may be an easier fixture. So it's still tough for them. Aston Villa have Spurs, Liverpool, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, and Brentford. The immediate first 2 fixtures are challenging. Crystal Palace, if they're picking up in form, that could be a challenging fixture. Chelsea are not easy. Bournemouth have Manchester City, and then they have Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, and Tottenham. And Bournemouth are in such a weird place that this is a mixed bag. They could only be really 2 difficult games in here, or all 5 of them could be easy. Bournemouth are just random like that. Brentford still have a good fixture list. They have Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Leicester, and Villa. They could win all of those games. Brighton have Liverpool, Manchester City, Bournemouth, Southampton, and Fulham. So after Man City, their fixtures will become easier. And I will be looking to move into their fixtures after the Man City game. Chelsea have Manchester United, which is a tricky game. Then they have Arsenal, which is a difficult game. Then they have Leicester, Aston Villa, and Southampton. So it's mixed. It's possible that they don't win in the next 3-4 games, but they could also beat all of these games. The Chelsea of this year is definitely much better than the Chelsea of last year. Crystal Palace have Wolves, Fulham, Aston Villa, Newcastle, and Ipswich. In those 5 fixtures, 3 of them are completely winnable. Everton have Southampton, West Ham, Brentford, Man United, and Wolves. And to be honest, for Everton, these are all games that they can get a result in. Fulham have Brentford, Crystal Palace, Wolves, Tottenham, and Brighton. Those are good fixtures. They can get a result there. Ipswich have Leicester, Spurs, Man United, Forest, and Crystal Palace. Ipswich have proven to be competitive. They will be competitive. Leicester have Ipswich, then they have Man United, Chelsea, Brentford, and West Ham. Out of all the fixtures here, I see the toughest ones to be Chelsea and Brentford. Liverpool have Brighton, then they have Aston Villa, and then Southampton, and then Manchester City and Newcastle. So they could beat Brighton, even though they have a poor record as we've just discussed. Villa is a winnable game. Southampton is an easy game for them. Then Man City will be tough and Newcastle will be tricky. Man City have Bournemouth, Brighton, Tottenham, and Liverpool, ascending in steps of difficulty. It'll be a nice ramp up. And then after Liverpool, they have Forest, which will be a tricky game. Man United have Chelsea, Leicester, Ipswich, Everton, and Arsenal. So honestly, if I was a Man United manager, not manager but board, I would fire him after the Chelsea game to give the next manager 3 games that look winnable. Newcastle have Arsenal, and then Forest, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and Liverpool. Given how weak they seem to be at the back, it's going to be tricky. They will be able to score at the very least, so Isak would be somebody I would be looking to bring in, especially after the Arsenal game. Nottingham Forest have West Ham, Newcastle, Arsenal, Ipswich, and Man City. 2 of those games are very difficult, and the other 3 are winnable. Southampton have Everton, Wolves, Liverpool, Brighton, and Chelsea. There's no such thing as an easy fixture for Southampton, so I can see them losing all. The best they can achieve in any of these things is a draw. Anything more than that is just bonus. Spurs have Aston Villa, Ipswich, Man City, Fulham, and Bournemouth. So they have winnable games. West Ham have Forest, Everton, Newcastle, Arsenal, and Leicester. So 3 of those games are winnable and 2 of them will be tricky, and 1 of them is a definite L. Wolves have Crystal Palace, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, and Everton. Given the fixtures they have had in the past, this almost feels like it's easy. So I believe that this is when their season begins. Week 9, they've had incredibly difficult fixtures for them, and I believe that it's easing up. So I'll be looking to move into their affairs. When it comes to looking at possible captain choices, Newcastle versus Arsenal, I could see Saka being a good captain choice, Havertz as well, and Isak. Man City versus Bournemouth, Haaland. Leicester versus Ipswich, Vardy could steal something for you, and Delap as well. Liverpool versus Brighton, Welbeck and Salah. Nottingham Forest versus West Ham, Wood and Bowen. Everton versus Southampton, I wouldn't be choosing a captain there. Crystal Palace versus Wolves, it's a tricky fixture. They'll be bold, but I wouldn't choose a captain in this fixture. Spurs versus Aston Villa, I also wouldn't choose a captain from this fixture. Manchester United and Chelsea, Palmer is a great captain choice. I wouldn't fault you if you chose Garnacho or Fernandez as well. Fulham versus Brentford, you have Mbomo, and then Nisa, and then Raul Jimenez. Those are the most popular captain choices I could conceive given the fixtures that we have. With that, I hope the rest of the week treats you well and that we can come up with tactics that will take us to the top. Until then, stay safe, have a great week. Bye.